In this series of videos, we're going to go through the best practices of fusing up a 24 shot heavy duty rack. We always start out first, of course, with safety. You want to make sure that you have a fire extinguisher on hand even while you're fusing things up. You never know when or if something could happen, but you always want to be prepared for that. You also want to make sure that you have a pair of safety glasses. You should never be doing anything with fireworks without a pair of safety glasses on. And also, if you're sensitive at all to chemicals, you'll want a pair of protective gloves to work with. When fusing a fireworks show together, there are three primary methods of connecting your leader fuses to your shell fuses. Those three methods are tape, zip ties, and firework connectors. We're going to look at the pros and cons of using each different method, and then also tips and tricks to how to get the most out of whichever method you choose. No matter what method you choose, we're going to show you why it is absolutely essential to have a good pair of fuse cutters on hand at all times when fusing. So we have our rack loaded up with our canister shells, and before we start fusing these together, the very first thing we want to do is to trim all of the ends of our fuses. So that's where you want to take your fuse cutters and take at about a 30-degree angle, if you can do that, and trim the fuse and expose fresh powder. So just go down in a pattern, trimming each one of your fuses. It'll only take you a few minutes, and it is the number one thing that you can do to ensure that you get an ignition on every one of your shells. Choosing the right tape is important. I do not recommend the blue painter's tape. This tape is made to not stick to things. That's the last thing you want when it comes to fireworks. Do not use the blue tape. Some swear by duct tape because it has such strength and it sticks so well. I think it's a little bit overkill. You don't need the threaded reinforced tape for fireworks. So that leaves us with two other options. You can use a Scotch standard contractor's tape. This has been a good tape. I've used it over the years. But lately I have gone to the green rough surface tape. And this tape has great sticking ability to the fuses, and it's also very easy to work with. I like getting it in a little bit wider roll. You can get it in a 3/4 inch wide roll, but I like a little bit longer piece, a wider piece. So you want to take your leader fuse. You will always want to make sure that your shell fuse is pointing towards the flames, pointing to where your fire is coming from. Don't ever point it away from the direction of which your fuse is burning. Always point it toward the direction. And then remember that angle cut that we made on the fuse, exposing that fresh powder. We want to marry that up as nice and tight as we can to our leader fuse. So you want that to lay right down on top of that fuse. And then you place your tape over that, squeeze it tightly around, and then wrap it several times. This method is doing several different things. It's putting that fresh powder tight with your leader fuse. It's giving us a nice channel inside of here to where if it doesn't ignite that end, it will burn through the sidewall of the fuse inside this flame. Inside this tape wrapping. It will create an area that concentrates the heat and will make sure that this fuse, even though this is burning very quickly to go by, it's going to ignite this fuse. There's just no way that it's not going to. So again, you'll usually on a fan rack you will want to go in a pattern of side to side to side to side. The biggest thing is to make sure that you're getting your fuses in equal distance apart on your fuse, so that you have them going off in an even succession, and fusing the direction that I am, it's going to send one into the left hand side of the sky, one into the center, and then one into the right. So it's all depending on how you set up your show, how you set up your rack in relation to your audience and to where they're at. But the biggest thing is you want these equal distances apart. So leave yourself enough room that it's comfortable to come from one shell fuse to the next. Again, marry that fuse up just as tightly as you can with the fresh powder. Crimp your tape around to make sure that that's tight right where the fresh powder is, and then wrap your tape around the fuses, holding it tight again, but giving it several wraps. One wrap, it'll burn right through your tape. That's why we're using several rounds of tape here. This isn't going to burn through. It's going to concentrate all of that heat inside that tape and going to make sure that we get a good solid ignition. So we've got our rack all fused up and ready to go. We've got a good tail to connect our to our rest of our show, or a igniter if that's if you're using an electronic ignition system. The last tips, of course, again, are to always trim your fuses. Never use the fuses directly out of the box. They can be contaminated, or just the black powder can fall out of the end of the fuse. Always trim your fuses. Always point your fuses at the oncoming fire as they're coming around. Always make sure that your zip ties, if you're using those, are tight. We recommend our zip tie gun to do that with. It pulls them tighter than you can with your fingers, and it trims them off all in one motion. So we want those tight. And then using fuse connects, always trim the end of your fuse and lay that fuse, the angle cut, on top of the leader fuse in order to make sure that you get a good pass fire on those.